So welcome to our world, and thank you everyone for joining. We are here today to tell you a little bit more about the latest call for the New Dimensions Lab. This is our eighth New Dimensions Lab that we're holding. So we're just going to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about how the lab works and what we're looking for, and then we'll give you an opportunity to ask any specific questions you have before well before the deadline, so that you can get your applications um, in. And I would say the earlier you can get them in, the better, because we do review as we go along. It's always much better for us to have a little bit of time. So try not to leave it till the last day if you possibly can. And the call for application link and details is in the chat. Tara just put it there. And with that said, maybe we could do some introductions first. So I'll come back to me at the end. Tara, can we start with you?
Yeah, hey everyone. I am the New Dimensions Lab Program Manager. I'm here to make sure everything done smoothly. And I'm also part of the jury that reads to all of your amazing projects. So really looking forward to receiving them. I'll pass the baton on to Ajwa.
Hi everyone, my name is Ajwa. I lead the policy and research efforts here at Electric South. I work in advocacy and I guess just positioning the immersive community within policy conversations, and I'll also be part of the jury.
Jason.
Hey everyone, my name is Jason Stapleton. I am the technical advisor at Electric South. My background spans from working in visual effects to 3D animation, photogrammetry, LiDAR scanning, and of course XR and social VR.
Great, thank you. And then we've got Sade in the background there. She's hiding behind Electric South logo and running a lot of things behind the scenes. And I'm Ingrid Kopp. I'm one of the directors at Electric South. I run the labs and partnerships. One of the co-founders, along with Stephen Markovitz as well. So yeah, let me just run you through how this is all going to work. And I will say, Tara is going to be the contact for any questions you have about the lab. If you are accepted into the lab, she's going to be the person who's going to be doing a lot of the logistics around the lab. So Tara is definitely someone you will probably be reaching out to at some point. So like I said, this is the eighth edition of the lab. We have been running this in both Cape Town and Johannesburg for the last 15 years. And the goal is really to help you find a way to tell your story in XR, whether that be virtual reality or augmented reality, and sometimes even another kind of extended reality that incorporates a little bit of both of those and maybe some other technologies. I think the one thing I will say right from the get-go is if you feel like you don't have any experience in XR, whether it be virtual, augmented, or otherwise, don't worry. What we are looking for when we have the call is artists who have a portfolio of work. So we just want you to have some kind of creative practice. The more diverse and interdisciplinary that creative practice is, the better. And be really interested in exploring a way to tell a nonfiction story in an XR technology. So you just need to have the enthusiasm and the desire. But we do ask that everyone who applies does have a creative practice where you can actually show us work that you have created, right? So this is not a lab for complete newbies in the art space, but you don't have to have any XR experience. So I just want to say that at the top, because I know that some people in the past have not applied because they felt like they didn't have enough technology experience. They hadn't made XR before, and that doesn't matter. I think the other side, as well as a creative practice and a portfolio of work, the other side that is really important is that you have an idea, a non-fiction idea that you want to explore using an XR technology. Now, you might not know exactly how to do that. You might have an idea that you're like, I think this would work as a 360 or as a room scale virtual reality, or I've got this sort of augmented reality story. I kind of feel like I know the edges of it, but not quite how to tell it. That's fine. The lab will be a week, a residential week where you will be with us, with all the advisors, with the Electric South team, and we will help you to figure out how to tell that story. But what we do need for this application is an idea, like the kernel of an idea that you want to tell in an XR technology. And I would say the more you have thought about that idea, the more, no matter how no matter how much help you need on the sort of technology side, the more you've really sort of thought about what that idea is and why you want to bring it into the XR space, the better. So a one-line answer is never really good enough. We do get some things like, I want to tell a VR story in a hairdresser in Joburg. Like that isn't enough detail, right? So if you already have some characters, if you've already identified a particular thing that's ongoing that you want to explore, like the more detail you can give us, the better. We know that you don't necessarily have time to do a lot of development, but a one-line answer is not going to cut it because we're really looking for your artistic practice and a great idea. So I think those are the two things that I would really say to focus on in your application. Um, so that's I just wanted to get that in at the top because I think that those are, obviously things as you're applying that you're going to need to know. And now I'll just go on and just talk a little bit about what actually happens at the lab and how it all works. So if you are accepted, and the call ends on the Tara, what's the deadline? The 17th of September. So you must get your applications in by the 17th of September. And then about a month after that, we'll let you know if you've been accepted. There will be a shortlist and some shortlist interviews as well. And then for the projects that are selected, we will invite you to come to a location just outside of Johannesburg. We will pay for any travel that is required and visas from within Africa. So obviously we are looking for projects from across Africa. You need to be living and working in Africa, now. And as long as you are flying in and back to an African country, we will cover your flights. We will cover visas. And then when you're in South Africa with us, we cover all accommodation, all the food, all of it. So we really try to make sure that you're not out of pocket during this week. The lab is in a really beautiful location. I'd say one of the things that is as important as the technical and sort of story work that you will do during the week is that we're creating a real sense of gathering and we are networking you with each other, right? So there's a real peer-to-peer support group. You're meeting other people who you will continue to hopefully work with in the future. So we really try and create a real sense of kind of like a retreat, right? So we're eating together, we're playing together as well as doing the work of the lab. And that's a really, really important part of this lab. During the lab itself, I think one thing to highlight is it's not a technical lab, so we're not going to be teaching you Unity or Unreal Engine. There's not going to be a lot of technical training in the lab. That said, there will be technical creative technologists on hand who can take you through certain things, but we only have really 6 full days together in the lab, and there isn't enough time to do full technical training. So it's much more around all the advisors will give talks about their work. They'll share learnings that they have had during their careers. And then you will have one-on-one time with all of the advisors and the Electric South staff, where we will tease out your project and help you troubleshoot, maybe some issues you're having with like how to get from here to there. And by the end of the lab, you will come out with a really great pitch, a really great pitch. You will actually pitch your project at the end of the lab. And then following the lab, you'll have about a month to write up a full treatment with a budget. That happens after the lab. And then from those full treatments and budgets, we will select 2 projects to fund. And we will also help all of the projects, obviously, to try and find funding and support wherever possible, because we really want, all of this work to get made. So that's kind of the shape of the lab. So yeah, I think the things to just highlight is it's not a technical training lab. If that's what you're looking for, I would say this probably isn't the lab for you. This is much more around exploring a whole range of ideas, showing you all different kinds of technologies that are possible, and then for helping you figure out where you sit within that spectrum and the kind of approach you want to take. Jason, I don't know if you want to say anything else just on technology and like how we kind of deal with that during the lab.
Yeah, I mean, Firstly, just that it's a really, really super fun lab. This really is a place to meet fascinating people. Really fun to kind of throw ideas around and use the advisors such as myself and the other technical advisors to really just get a better handle of what can be done, what is maybe best to steer around, what's best to steer towards. Um, yeah. So really like you do that. Take advantage of the advisors that are here and the time to learn. But as Ingrid said, this is not a teaching lab, but all of us advisors are super happy to share and shoot the breeze and just kind of chat around the very complex. Not complex, but like XR is a big field. There's actually generally like a lot of like philosophical conversations that come up, and that's often like very, very fun. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to mention it is really fun. That's a really important point, Jason. It is really fun. We make it really fun, and it is really about bringing people together to explore new creative opportunities, which is really fun. But I think that Jason touches on a really important topic. We, you do need to be a self-starter. You need to be really proactive because we are going to give you the tools, but we're not going to do it for you. And we're not going to train you during the lab in how some of those tools work. We will show you how to find the resources and the community to learn from after the lab, but you will need to do that, right? So we do need people who kind of are willing to do that. And I think the other thing to say is only one person can apply per project, and we usually want that to be the creative lead, right? So the director role, whether you call it the director or not. So the creative lead is normally the person who attends the lab, but we understand that some projects already have teams attached, and that's actually a really great thing for us to see in your application. So if you do already have a producer or a technologist working with you, that's fantastic. They can't come to the lab, but we really like to see that because it helps us to know that you have a team who will help you get this project made after the lab. So I would say, remember, only one person can attend the lab. But if you do have a team already in place, let us know that in your application. It's really, really great for us to see, that you have someone to work with after the lab to produce the project, help you put together the budget. And the other thing, and I think this is also really important, we are not expecting the creative lead, the director, to be the technologist. So you might be the one who's also building this out in Unity or whatever tools you're using. And you might be one of those people who just really likes doing everything. And you're like a jack of all trades, or like what I always call it, like a Swiss Army knife, right? Some people love that. They love being the Swiss Army knife of technology and creativity. That's great. But we are not expecting that. If you are more of a director type, and you want to have technologists doing the technology with you in collaboration, and it's more of a co-creation with other people, that's also totally fine, right? Everyone works differently. The teams will look really different. If you don't already have a team in place, we will talk that through with you and help you during the lab troubleshoot how to get there. Because I would say, if you are not that Swiss Army knife, the chances are you are going to need to go find those technologists for whichever whatever skills you need to complete the project, and we will help you identify who those people are,
Yeah.
or at least what those skills gaps are. So don't panic if you are not thinking, oh my God, I use my laptop to write emails, I don't use it to program, blah blah blah, right? That's fine. What we are asking from you is great ideas and a creative portfolio. We will tackle the rest of it with you during the lab. Um, but yes, do let us know if you've already got teams in place, because that's really, really great for us to know. And then the final thing I just wanted to mention before we go to questions is we are this year, as well as last year, really, really interested in social XR. So by that we mean things like VR chat worlds, potentially some theatrical experiences where you've got a sort of nonfiction story, but maybe there's some kind of live performance aspect. Like those kinds of stories we're particularly interested in. So I would say for anyone who is really interested in exploring social XR, we would really love to hear about those ideas. And then the final thing I just want to say is on this whole nonfiction, we are very, very elastic in how we think about the sort of the nonfiction parameters. So don't restrict yourself. It can be a hybrid fiction, nonfiction. We're not thinking like old school documentary with the voice of God narrator, right? This is not how we're thinking of nonfiction. So don't think you have to have like this boring, you know, old school documentary approach, and that's the only kind of thing that will get into the lab. That's not the case at all. We are interested in creative approaches to nonfiction stories. So, I would definitely say do not hold back. And if in doubt, I would say apply. Um, don't I think sometimes people second guess themselves and then they don't apply. I think the best thing to do is put a great application together, and then we will obviously then assess whether that kind of fits into the nonfiction parameters. But we are very elastic, so please don't self-censor yourselves. I think I've covered everything. Tara, is there anything on the logistics that I should touch on?
No, I don't know if you mentioned the $20,000 grant that goes oh, you did already. Okay.
No, I
Okay.
mentioned that there's a grant. I didn't mention that it's 20,000. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
that, obviously 20,000 is a lot of money for some things. It's not a lot of money for VR. So, one of the other things I would say is the more you have a team in place who might want to like might be able to fundraise for making up the budget to be higher, that is also great because 20,000 doesn't go so far with some of these projects, and you may well need more. So that's another thing to think about. Like, do you already have a team in place that could fundraise to fill that extra gap? If your project is 40,000 or 50,000, et cetera, et cetera. So those are just some things to think about. Because I know sometimes you see 20,000 and it's like, oh, that's great. But some of these XR projects get very, very expensive very quickly. So that's just something to think about, as you're thinking about, what your project is and what it requires. And that is something we take into consideration when we're reading the applications. If your project seems like it's going to be really expensive and you don't have a team in place where we feel like you're going to get there, that would be an application that we may not may not score so highly. So that is something to think about. Your application should the project should be realistic. And obviously it is realistic if you've already got match funding or some other sources of funding. But if you want to do this crazy, $1 million project and you're applying for this lab and we're only offering 20,000 and you haven't got a producer in place and there's no kind of runway to get there, we probably would be like, yeah, this is probably not going to happen. So do think about how realistic your projects are when you're applying.
Mm. Maybe something I'd like to add there is the AI topic. And we are totally pro like AI wonderful, great tool. Definitely need to use it, but like don't lean too heavily on it. And just it's going to work fine because I'm going to use AI. So that's something to just kind of think about carefully in your pitches, and not just say I'm going to solve it because AI is going to help me. We need a little bit more than that.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I think the
Yeah.
AI question is obviously something that is coming up more and more. And yeah, I would say exactly, I think the way you framed it, Jason, is great. Like we're not against AI. We're really interested in projects that involve AI. But if there isn't a critical and thoughtful use of that AI, it would actually count against you, right? Because if it's just like a sort of lazy, like AI will do this, I don't have the skills, but I'm going to use AI, and it's just kind of thrown out there without any kind of real thought into like what that means. That wouldn't look so great. So really, like if you are including AI, really think carefully about why and how, and what that might mean for the project.
Yeah, and feel free to ask us quick questions about that now. Like yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
Mm,
yes,
mm.
if anyone, yeah, exactly. I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of bring that up now. Um,
Before
okay.
Hi.
we,
Mm.
yeah, Ajwa, I know you want to say something.
Hi. I'm just thinking that there may be people on the call who they saw the poster, they have an artistic practice, but they don't really know a lot about XR, the examples and all of that kind of thing, I think our website is a really good place. We have descriptions of some of the projects that have been made and the ways that they have been made, and maybe the others on the panel could maybe share a little bit around examples and that just for people who are in an artistic practice, and they have a little curiosity. They saw our poster and they want to know how do they get to the fleshing out sort of their idea.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would say do as much homework as you can. If you have never seen a VR project, and if you've never put on a VR headset or tried augmented reality on your phone, again, we're not expecting you to have access to a headset, but the more you can read about projects, the better. Open Doc Lab have I've forgotten the name of it. Tara, can you remember the Open Doc Lab resource?
I will email everyone after this.
Or if we can find it, we can put it in the chat. There's a great list of projects there. The other thing that I always recommend, and it's a great way to see what's happening recently, is look at all the festivals that are really well known for XR. So Venice is happening right now. You can look on the Venice immersive website and see the projects they've got there. You can see the worlds that they're hosting, the VR chat worlds. I would say look at Venice, look at South by Southwest, look at IDFA Doc Lab. I mean, there's a few others, but look at those festivals, see what's been there. You don't necessarily even need to see the projects, but it will give you a real sense of what people are working on now. So the more you can do research, the better. And obviously, if you have tried projects, that's even better. We don't expect that, but yeah, it does help. So do your research for sure.
I've got some questions rolling in.
Mm-hmm.
Can I
Yeah.
take the first one? Who's Colin Catalyst? What is the restriction of use of AI images or video in the submission?
There is no restriction. I do prefer to know if things are, I think it's good to say personally, but I mean, I don't know if other people feel the same, but I do know that when you are doing development and you are having to come up with a way of documenting your ideas, AI is really useful for that, right? Because you don't have the budget at this point to go out and employ people. There's a lot of things that you're feeling out, and that actually is a tool that I think AI is great for. I personally prefer that someone says, this is my uh this is my pitch deck, and I've right now it's all created with and I actually like to know the tool. You don't have to, obviously, but I personally like that. It doesn't count against you. I just like to know how those pitch decks are created. I mean, especially for example, if you're doing something that looks very handmade, and then I'm like, oh wow, they're a watercolor artist or whatever, but it's actually just created in AI. I personally think it's better to know that. The more transparent you can be, the better. That's my feeling. It doesn't count against you. This is a really good reason to use AI tools, but I think
Mm.
transparency is good. That's my feeling.
Yeah, and let me just echo that. It's the reason why we want to know if you're using AI or not is that we can technically help you through the do's and don'ts or some of the pitfalls that come along with using AI. So us knowing what tools you're using and why and where you're using AI is going to allow us to help you more.
Um, Adjo, I'm just thinking this might be a good time to pitch your convening webinars because I think that Sandra Rodriguez and Brett actually both the way that they're using AI in their work is very interesting and thoughtful. So maybe do you want to just let them know when they're happening? Because I think that those could be super useful as people are kind of thinking this stuff through.
Hi, everyone. So, part of the work that I do at Electric South, as I said before, is advocacy around immersive technology. And we've done a lot of work in the past exploring uses of AI because we all know that immersive straddles quite neatly or quite nicely the arts sector as well as the tech sector in a way that I think a lot of other aspects of our creative world don't. So, over the past in over 3 weeks, we are hosting a webinar series called Electric Africa in Conversation. We're hosting it on our YouTube channel, which Tara has shared in the chat. Last week, we had a really great conversation with Ingrid. And this week, today at 5 p.m., we'll be having a conversation with Sandra Rodriguez, and next week with Brett Gaylor. All three of our guests are, experts in the immersive field, are playing around with AI. Sandra and Brett are creating work using yeah, using immersive arts and immersive media. So they're a great way to really get a good introduction. We also have past webinars on our YouTube channel as well as on our website from both from Sandra and some other folks too, discussing their work, showing how they're using the tools. So I think it would be really good for you to tune in. And if you aren't available to tune in today at 5 and next week at 5, we will have them all on our YouTube channel. The conversation we had with Ingrid last week is already up.
Thanks, Adjoa. So yeah, that's just another way of saying we're definitely not opposed to AI. We just really want transparency and critical approaches. I think that's kind of really all I can say at this point. Tara, do you want to carry on with the questions?
Yes. So we got one from Mina Salama. Hello, guys. Thank you for the intro. So I have a question. If I have two project ideas, one is definitely feasible and the other one I'm not sure yet about, but it's really under the umbrella of social XR, can I apply with the two projects? And if I'm shortlisted, can we discuss them further?
You can. I mean, I would say generally it always feels a bit watered down. I sort of feel like you have a stronger application if you have one approach that you are really passionate about. Like when I see applications with two ideas, I totally understand we all think like this. It's not like you only have one idea in your mind at the time. But I would say the more you can actually think about the one you really are passionate about developing in this lab and highlight that, the better. I generally find when there's two, it's like we don't it's just like it's harder to focus. We're not really sure which one you're passionate about. The other one can feel like a bit of a throwaway. So I would say if at all possible, pick one and go with that. We can always discuss later whether that is the right one. And this is actually a really important thing. We are not, if you get to the lab and you're exploring an idea and it all falls apart, which it has done in the past, it's okay. Like part of this is that we are trusting you as the artist and we will help you figure out how to come up with another idea. So ideas do fall apart sometimes, but I would say ideally you want to be applying with an idea you're really passionate about and that you really believe in. And I think if there's two ideas, it sort of feels like you're hedging your bets. So it's up to you. If you really are feeling like you've got two strong ideas, go for it. But they must be two strong ideas then, right? Because if one's really weak, it's going to make your whole application look weaker. So I would say it's up to you. Sorry, that's not very helpful. I would go with one strong idea. If you are applying with two, make sure they're both really strong.
Brilliant feedback. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Then Crystal Liebenberg, can individual artists apply or is this only for teams of creatives?
No, absolutely. Individual artists can apply. And usually it is individual artists who are applying. I just brought up the team thing earlier because, we have found more and more, especially now that we are no longer producing the projects. In the past, we had a much more hands-on role after the lab. Once the projects that were getting funding were selected, we would be much more hands-on, but now we don't do that. So we really do need to have projects and artists who can really make the work happen without much support. So that's why I was saying, if there is a team, it's great because we know that you've got a producer that, you can work with or a creative technologist or, whomever it could be. But yes, most of the time the applications are from individual artists and that's totally fine. The lab is designed for individual artists, so we don't expect you to have a team in place.
Maybe just
Thank you so
something to echo there. Sorry, Tara. XR is hard, and teams often are a good way to go, but definitely like a lot of artists that a single person can do these things, and this is where we would use AI very, very well to help fill in those gaps with the technical skills. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting year in a way with the AI, because the AI tools have come so far from when, I mean, it's extraordinary. Like the conversations we're having compared to last year are quite different. So I would say, we're all learning as well on the electric style side. And a lot of this is about us working together, right? This really is about peer-to-peer support, including us. Like we are all learning as we go, a lot of this stuff, because a lot of it is about exploring through practice. And that's what makes it so interesting for us as well. Like we're not like, oh, it's another New Dimensions lab, we're doing this again. Every year is really different because the tools change. And so the conversations are always different. And now obviously with the AI tools, it's different again and exponentially quicker as well. I mean, everything's just moving and moving. So that's great. Tara.
Then we've got Colin Catalyst again. What are you expecting to see in submissions in relations to focus points, and what should we be avoiding in the submission? Example, is it a pitch deck approach, long document form, etc.?
It depends. Everyone is different. You really, I'd say the more visuals you have to help get across your idea, the better. It's really, really difficult when you write something in text for us to know what you're meaning. So I actually find visuals really helpful, but what I don't find helpful is just a bunch of images that don't actually help. Like, I think sometimes what people do is they try and put as much in as possible to kind of like bump it out, but it's actually not helpful. It kind of like becomes more like vaporware because it's not actually what you're intending to do. So I would say what is really helpful is if you actually have what's the word?
Storyboard,
What's it called?
like a
A
like a
storyboard.
storyboard
Thank you. A
or
storyboard.
an
Something
animatic or
diagrammatic.
something. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Storyboards, animatics, things like that are so helpful because then we can really see what you're planning on doing. A slide deck with lots of pretty pictures that aren't actually conveying what your project is going to do are not so helpful. So I would say it really depends, but really what we want is visuals that help us truly understand what it is that you're trying to get at. So mood boards, for example, are really useful, right? Because we can see the aesthetic approach that you're going for. But a 50-page slide deck with lots of images, where you're just kind of like, look at all this stuff, not so helpful.
Yeah.
But I would say if you can do things like storyboards, animatics, any kind of sense, a visual sense of where you're trying to get to, that is really helpful.
And this is kind of where the AI thing comes back in again. So if your practice is this, like this is your skills, and then you're showing super great AI images that look really really crazy, but that's you saying you're going to create these. If you're an artist and you already have a practice, you're a painter or something, but then you're showing AI, rather show us your artwork. Um, than rely on AI there. And we pretty good at spotting when AI is being used. So again, like AI is good, definitely use AI, but don't just rely on it as an easy solve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we really want to see your work. We want to see your approach. We're not expecting everything to be glossy and polished. We just want to get a sense of what you're trying to do. Some people have submitted hand drawn storyboards in the past. It's fine. We just need a sense of like what you are attempting to do, and I think visuals can help with that because when you're writing text, sometimes you have one idea, but we'll have a totally different idea in our mind. So a text synopsis with some visuals can help us see where you're trying to get to. And I'd say mood boards are always useful because it's really great to get a sense of your aesthetic approach.
And just the last thing there, short and to the point, so keep it as clear and concise
Yeah.
as you can. If the idea is a complex one and you feel like you need to write a lot about it, rather spend a fair amount of time trimming that down into something that is short. And if you can't get that into something that's shorter, that's maybe an issue in its own sense. That if you can't make that into like a elevator pitch type thing, then think more carefully about your concept.
Yeah, I mean, just remember we are reading, we're going to be reading hundreds of these applications. So the quicker you can get to the point and really wow us with the core idea, the better.
Thank you so much, Ingrid and Jason. Just jumping to the next one because we're getting a
Yeah,
few
yeah,
Q&A. Yeah. So from Olajide Ayeni, does it matter if the project is situated in traditional media for documentary filmmaking, but also incorporates XR in development and particularly for its presentation?
Yes, I'm sort of feeling like I'm not. So is it, you mean there's a traditional media project that also has an XR element?
Yeah, so incorporating it only within development, and yeah, that's a bit confusing, particularly
I
for
mean,
its presentation.
we
Yeah.
we are interested in a project that can stand alone as an XR project. If it does have a traditional component as well, that's fine. But it has to be like the main project that we are funding is XR. So it definitely can't just be like a little add-on to a big media project that isn't
Yeah.
immersive. So I would say it really depends, but like often people will be working on something where they've got like a traditional documentary and there's like a virtual reality project, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but the virtual reality project needs to stand alone. It can't just be like a little trailer for the for the traditional piece, right? It's got to
Yeah.
be its own thing that can sort of be self-contained. So like
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think about it.
Maybe a good example there is having a VR piece, but you've got a 2D film sitting in your virtual reality headset. You're basically showing a 2D film in virtual reality space, as opposed to recontextualizing that story into the different medium of VR or AR, or in the XR thing. So that directly transposing 2D into XR you need to think through that a bit more carefully and
Yeah.
use the medium in a more nuanced way.
Right. Yeah. Because I think sometimes that does, yeah, exactly. If you try and take, like Jason was saying, a traditional film and jam it into um VR, it just feels like a traditional film jammed into VR, right? It's not coming from VR. But I will just a great example, actually, I was thinking because it's one of my favorite VR projects still is Notes on Blindness. Notes on Blindness is like now like 10 years old. Yeah, about 10 years old,
Yeah.
um, and maybe even older. And it is a beautiful VR piece, but there is actually a feature-length film as well. So I mean, I think that's a great example where they're completely self-contained. You don't need to see one to understand the other. They're both beautiful, but they both do very different things. And Notes on Blindness, the VR piece, is very, very much about VR language and VR vernacular. So yeah, that could be an example that really works well. Tara, I'm just seeing that there's some questions in the chat as well. Are you seeing those? Do we need to submit a detailed budget
Yeah,
plan?
yeah. I'm seeing that, yes. But
Okay.
yeah, go ahead. You can answer that one.
Oh, okay. No, you do not need to submit a budget plan, a detailed budget plan at this point. We will ask for that if you are accepted into the lab in the month after the lab, we will ask for a detailed treatment, which includes a detailed budget with all the line items, right? Because we really want to see like how you're going to build it. Yeah, but that only comes after the lab. At this point, you don't have enough information. Well, we assume you don't have enough information to do the detailed budget plan. We certainly don't expect that at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ingrid and Jason. So from, I think I'm saying Kazian Robetse, hopefully I'm not butchering that. Hi, I wanted to know why the focus on nonfiction, just trying to understand the underpinning reason behind the genre choice. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a complicated question. So there's a couple of reasons. One is funding. So traditionally, our funding has been from funders who fund nonfiction, social issue storytelling. So more of the kind of human rights, social issue kind of stories. And Stephen and me both come from a documentary background. Although Stephen now does, all the genres, and I'm now deeply in immersive, and I'm very genre agnostic. But this particular lab is nonfiction. We have done other labs over the years that have not been nonfiction. And I'm sure in the future there will be things that we will do that will not be nonfiction. But this lab is really about how we explore documentary nonfiction topics in XR. So, it's very much built around that specific focus. It's not random. Yeah. But we don't, we have nothing against, there's some amazing um fiction projects and other kinds of projects. And, obviously we love to see that. It's just not what this lab does.
Yeah, so we've got three questions from Alex and Kwizu. Is it a plus to have a prototype or a vertical slice of the XR project? I'm just going to shout them all out.
Yeah.
Is there weight to every evaluation metric? And plus, how does aftermath program support look like beyond grant funding and the mentorship in the lab during the program?
So yes, absolutely. If you've already got a slice or something to show, fantastic. That's great. We welcome projects that are already in progress. I think the one thing I would say is if your project is already so far along the line that you don't need the lab, that's where we'd be like, this project's almost done. But yes, if you're already like doing some prototypes and you're working some things out and you've got something to show, please, like that's fantastic for us to see. Second question, the weights. We do have criteria. We do have some criteria, but the weight, we don't tend to score everything just by numbers because we find that flattens the pack, if that makes sense. And it means that you kind of lose the bottom and the top. So what we do is we have a criteria with scoring, and then we have a, a, a deliberation, and it's not just with Electric South, by the way. We have external people who do that with us. Um, and we will then talk it out, but with the criteria. So we don't go strictly by the weights, but there is a criteria. And I'll say right now, just because I think this is really important, we often cannot select great projects for lots of reasons. We need to have geographic diversity. Like we don't all want all the projects to come from one African country. We need gender diversity. We need a range of different topics, maybe a range of different technologies. So there are all sorts of things that we're looking at in that criteria. And it does mean that sometimes great projects don't get selected. We can only select 10 projects a year. And I say that because you mustn't, it really, I was going to say it really hurts my feelings, but that's the wrong word. I get really upset when people don't reapply because they think that we don't like them or their projects. It doesn't work like that. And I'm sure any of you have ever been on in panels for these kinds of things. Good work gets rejected all the time because there are lots of reasons for why we choose the projects we do. And it means that great artists and great work are sometimes not selected. And that's just the way it is. We have a limited. So I would really say, please do not be dispirited if you're not selected and please reapply. And then the final question was support. We basically offer mentorship. So we really help at the beginning to get you to contract. There's a lot more support at the beginning because we want to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row. And then once you're at contract phase, you're off and running. And then we just do monthly check-ins and you get tranches of payments and we'll ask for cost reports and various things along the way. But it's essentially mentorship.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions, so I don't know if we should wrap or yeah, one more coming through from Jonathan Lefenia. What are the main things one should avoid when applying for this opportunity?
I mean, I think what I would say is just present your work. We just want to see you present an idea that you are truly passionate about. I think one thing that, if you just kind of try to come up with an idea that you're not really that interested in because you just want to apply, like often that just doesn't work because even if you do get into the lab, you are now stuck with this idea. And, it's a lot of work. I mean, the lab is amazing, but it is a lot of work. It's a big commitment. It's a week out of your life. So I'd say, apply with something you're really passionate about developing, truly passionate about developing, something that you want to do, not just something you think is going to please Electric South, because you are going to be the one sitting with this and having to develop this. And I'd say, just going back to what we were saying before, don't keep everything as short and tight as possible. Visuals are great. But don't just throw everything in the application. Like it's got to be stuff that really represents your work and what you want to do. And sorry, the last thing I will say is if you are in doubt, do apply because people really do second guess themselves, especially women. I think that's true. And you should just apply. If you feel like you're not sure, but you've got a good idea and you've got a great track record, just apply.
Maybe just once again the AI thing, and I keep coming back to this. Like AI really is our friend. So if you are applying but you're uncertain about certain things, and I just kind of assume that everyone uses AI in this way. But ask GPT for help. Like if there's a bit of, like you're uncertain about a certain side of things, you can rapidly upskill yourself to the right just that's the right amount to make your pitch deck sound a little bit better. So it's like, what is XR? Like if that's a question on your mind, hey GPT, how are you today? Can you tell me what XR is?
But that, Jason, that actually does that. That is a really good thing. So use GPT like that. Do not include answers that are written by GPT without editing
Yes.
them because we
Yes.
can see that a mile away and it is so lazy. It looks terrible. So I will say this, like I know a lot of people, the English is their second language, so like these applications are much harder, and ChatGPT can be great for that, right? But you've got to edit them. You can't
Yeah.
because whenever we get these GPT answers, they're so bad. It's so obvious they're ChatGPT. Edit your answers. If you need ChatGPT to help you write, maybe you're a visual thinker and you're not so good at writing, or English isn't your first language, great. But you have to edit those answers. Because otherwise, honestly, that is something that really counts against you. If we just get straight ChatGPT, we can see it, and usually that's a straight out. So, I mean, I think that's really, really important. Um, yeah, don't rely on it for unedited answers because it just doesn't look good. And
I
and
think
we can spot it a mile away.
I would also just add, like, we want to see an extension of your artistic practice that needs to
Yeah.
come through very, very, very strongly. And I don't think anyone would be on this call if they didn't already have quite a strong point of view. And in terms of the question of what don't you want to see, as Ingrid said, we want to see something that could benefit from the lab. And so not something that looks so rigid that there would be no point in coming in. You have a very, very strong point of view. Perhaps, if someone could step into your artwork and you have this huge idea and you can fully explain it, it's really easy to come off the page. It's short, like Jason said, and given the lab as an extra, it would then develop. That's what we want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely want ideas where there's enough room in the lab to really like develop them, right? That's why I'm saying if you're already at the end of the journey and your project is pretty much finished, why do you need the lab? So that's, something we would take into consideration.
Wonderful. So I think we've come to the end and we've answered quite a lot of questions. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us and just inform everyone that's here that this will be available on our YouTube channel quite soon. So you can reference all the answers and the questions. Just to reiterate, the deadline is just before midnight on the 17th of September. So quite soon, I think in about 2 weeks. We will be shortlisting and we'll have online interviews in October. So please be mindful of that. You will be approached for that, and all successful applicants will be notified by the 13th of October. The in-person lab dates are the 7th to the 14th of December. And for those that need to apply for visas, just so you know, we're going to get onto that straight away. So if you are successful, I will be bugging you quite a lot to get that done quite soon. Yeah, so I don't know, Ingrid, Jason, Ajwa, if you have any closing comments before we wrap up.
I just wanted to mention that we're only going to be interviewing the shortlisted candidates. So, if you're applying,
Yes,
you're not necessarily going to get an interview, but we will have a shortlist, and then those candidates will be interviewed before we make the final selection.
perfect.